Hey, everybody, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into organic sphere flour,
Oh, cool.
the family-run mill in Texas.
Yeah.
So I've been looking over all the material. We got like FAQs and details on how they mill their flour, even some stories from people who use it.
Interesting.
And it's really not your average supermarket flour.
It really isn't.
What's the first thing that jumped out at you?
Well, uh, one of the most interesting things I think is their focus on freshness.
Freshness.
Yeah, they mill their flour like on demand the same day or the day before it's delivered to people.
On demand, really. Like, I'm so used to just grabbing a bag of flour at the store, and who knows how long it's been sitting on the shelf.
Right. Exactly. Most flour sits around forever, losing its flavor and nutrients.
Yeah.
But with organic sphere, you're basically getting it straight from the mill.
Huh, yeah, that's true.
It's got to make a difference in the taste.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's got to be like a cup of coffee, fresh versus one that's been sitting on a burner all day.
Yeah.
But,
Or like bread. Fresh bread versus like day-old bread.
exactly. Okay, so fresh, but that's not all.
Right.
They also don't process their flour at all. No bleaching, no additives. They even keep the bran and the germ, which is
Which is unusual these days.
why is that such a big deal?
Well, it's a huge difference from how most flour is made,
Mm.
and it's really important when you think about, how many people have problems digesting food these days.
Yeah, that's true.
The fiber in whole grains is often stripped away
Mhm.
in processing, and that could really help people, with their digestion.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense, and that's pretty unusual. But then on top of that, they're also using these ancient grains.
Yeah.
I keep seeing that word ancient grains everywhere, like
Right.
Emmer and Khorasan wheat.
Yeah, have you heard of those?
Not really.
So these are grains that haven't been messed with too much.
Hmm.
They haven't been hybridized or genetically modified like modern wheat.
Oh, so like heirloom tomatoes, but for wheat.
Exactly, like a taste of the past.
That's a great way to put it. I was reading that some people find ancient grains easier to digest. Is that real or is that just marketing hype?
Well, there's some evidence that they can be easier on the digestive system, especially for people sensitive to modern wheat. But of course, it's different for everyone.
Yeah. Of course, it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Right. But it's worth trying.
Okay, so we've got fresh flour, unprocessed ancient grains. It's kind of blowing my mind a little.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing why people are so excited about this stuff. But on top of all that, they're also a small family-run operation, and they're committed to organic practices.
Absolutely. And I think people are really looking for that these days, transparency.
Yeah. Like, where does my food come from? Who's making it? What are their values?
Exactly. Consumers want to know the whole story behind the product.
Yeah.
And with Organic Sphere, you get that personal connection.
Yeah,
It's not some giant faceless corporation.
definitely. Yeah, it's like a small family, and they're not just offering wheat flour either. They've got jowar millets, Bengal, gram flour, even rice flour. It's like a whole different world of flour than what you see at the supermarket.
It is.
I mean, do you think this is like a bigger trend, this need for variety in our food?
I think so, yeah. People are getting more adventurous with their cooking. They're exploring different cultures and cuisines.
That's true.
And they're realizing there are all these flavors and textures out there just waiting to be discovered.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's like we've been stuck in a rut with just a few types of flour for so long.
Right.
But I have to admit, I'm a little lost on some of these flours. Like, what is jowar exactly, and how do you even use it?
So jowar is also called sorghum,
Okay.
and it's a gluten-free grain that's actually a staple food in lots of parts of the world,
Right.
especially India and Africa.
Oh, okay.
It has a slightly sweet, kind of earthy flavor,
Hmm.
and you can use it in all sorts of dishes.
Wow, that's really interesting. So it's not just some niche ingredient.
Oh, no, not at all.
It's got a whole history and culture behind it.
Exactly.
Okay, but hold on a second. I was just reading that Organic Sphere, they might even let customers mill their own grains at their facility in the future.
Wow.
Isn't that taking things to like a whole new level?
It is. It's like they're saying, hey, we're not just selling you flour. We want you to be part of the process.
Yeah.
That kind of transparency and engagement,
Yeah,
it's pretty rare.
it really is. I mean, is this the future of food? Like a closer connection between the people who make it and the people who eat it? I don't know, but it's definitely interesting.
It is.
But let's get back to the flour itself.
Okay.
I'm seeing a lot of positive reviews about the taste and the digestibility.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense when you're working with fresh, minimally processed ingredients.
Hmm.
The flavor and the nutritional value are going to be higher.
Yeah, that's true. But doesn't that make you wonder about the shelf life?
Hmm.
Like if it's so fresh, will it go bad quickly?
That's a good question. And yeah, it's something to keep in mind. Because it doesn't have preservatives, it's best to store organic sphere flour in an airtight container somewhere cool and dark.
So basically treat it like fresh produce.
Yeah, pretty much use it within a reasonable time frame.
That makes sense, but then wouldn't that be hard for people who don't bake that often?
I was thinking the same thing.
Hmm.
But organic sphere, they offer different sizes. So if you're not baking every day, you can buy smaller amounts and use it up before it goes bad.
Oh, that's good to know. So they've thought of that. But what about the cost? I mean, isn't organic fresh milled flour going to be way more expensive than what I usually buy?
It's a common concern, but the prices are actually pretty competitive, especially compared to other specialty flours. And when you consider the extra nutrition and the fact that you're supporting a small family business, it makes you think about value differently.
That's true. It's not just about the price per pound, it's about what you're getting for your money. And in this case, it seems like a lot, quality, freshness, and they're committed to sustainability.
Exactly. And that's really what sets Organic Sphere apart. It's not just about selling flour, it's about offering a new way of thinking about food.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but I feel like we've only scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore about Organic Sphere and their unique way of milling flour. What do you think? Ready to dive a little deeper?
Oh, absolutely. There's still so much to uncover,
Yeah.
and I have a feeling it's only going to get more interesting from here.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so we're back and ready to keep going with this Organic Sphere deep dive.
Sounds good.
One of the things that really caught my attention was this whole stone milling thing. I
Right.
know that's like the old school way to do it, but is there a reason why they choose to do that?
That's a really good question, and I think it goes back to what we were talking about before, their commitment to minimal processing.
Right.
Stone milling, it's basically crushing the grain between two stones, and it keeps more the nutrients and the natural oils in the flour compared to using those big steel rollers.
Oh, okay, so it's gentler on the grain. But wouldn't that also make it like slower and more expensive?
It can, yeah. But for Organic Sphere, it's about putting quality and flavor first,
Yeah.
not just speed or efficiency.
Yeah, that makes sense. Quality over quantity. I like that. And speaking of quality, we were talking about all those other flours they have besides wheat, like
Yeah.
jowar and millets.
Yeah.
Can we get into those a little more? I'm curious about like how people use them and, what's their cultural significance,
Absolutely. So jowar, remember we talked about that, it's also called sorghum,
right?
and it's gluten-free, and it's actually a staple food in a lot of countries, especially in India and Africa.
Hmm.
It's super versatile. You could use it in flatbreads, porridges, pancakes, even cookies.
Really? Wow. So it's not just some like specialty ingredient.
No, not at all.
It's got like a whole history behind it.
Exactly. And then there's millets.
Yeah, and that melts.
They've been around for thousands of years too,
Mm.
especially in Asia and Africa.
Wow.
People love them because they're so nutritious and they can grow in tough climates.
Tough climates, huh? I've been trying to eat more plant-based meals. Do you think millets could fit into that?
Definitely. They're packed with protein and fiber, and they're gluten-free too.
Okay,
They
cool.
have this kind of nutty, earthy flavor, and you can use them in sweet or savory dishes, like porridge salads, soups, even veggie burgers.
Okay, I'm sold. I need to try millets. But I have to admit, I'm a creature of habit when it comes to baking. I usually just stick with my regular all-purpose flour. What would you say to someone like me to get them to try something new, like Emmer or Khorasan wheat?
I would say be adventurous.
Yeah.
Emmer and Khorasan, they can really add something special to your baking.
Yeah.
Emmer has this nice nutty flavor that's perfect for bread and cookies.
Mm.
And Khorasan, which is sometimes called kamut, has this kind of sweet, buttery taste that's great for pastries and cakes.
You're making me hungry just talking about it. I never thought I'd be so into flour, but the more we learn about it, the more fascinated I am. But, all this talk about ancient grains and traditional methods makes me wonder, have we kind of lost something in our modern approach to food? Have we sacrificed quality and nutrition for convenience and efficiency?
It's definitely a question worth thinking about. And I think Organic Sphere is showing that there's a different way. They're proving that food can be both delicious and good for you, and that there's value in keeping those old traditions and ingredients alive.
It's like they're bringing back the art of flour milling and sharing it with everyone.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the flour itself, it's about the whole process where the grain comes from, how it's milled, the care that goes into it.
Exactly. And that commitment to quality goes beyond the mill, too. Remember, they encourage people to visit, and they're even thinking about letting people mill their own grain someday.
Now, that would be an experience. Speaking of experience, I'm curious about the family behind Organic Sphere. What can you tell us about them? What drives their passion for this?
Well, from everything I've read, they seem to be a family that really cares about sustainable agriculture and, making food that's good for people and the planet.
Yeah.
They believe in transparency, community, and taking care of the land.
It's like their values are baked right into their flour. And it's so refreshing to see a company that's so genuine and authentic. But running a small family business like that in a world dominated by huge corporations, it can't be easy, right?
Yeah, you're right. It takes a lot of dedication, hard work, and a willingness to stick to their vision, even when things get tough.
And in a world where everyone wants things cheap and easy, how do they compete?
I think they're connecting with people who are willing to pay a little more for quality and transparency and a product that aligns with their values. And by focusing on education and building a community around what they do, they're creating loyal customers who really appreciate what they stand for.
We always talk about voting with our dollars, supporting businesses we believe in. But with Organic Sphere, it feels like more than just buying something. It's like joining a movement towards a more conscious way of eating.
I think that's a great way to put it. They're not just selling flour, they're inviting us to be part of something bigger, a journey back to real food.
And isn't that what it's all about? Reconnecting with our food, appreciating where it comes from, and enjoying the flavors that nature intended.
Yes, it's about finding joy and nourishment in food. And Organic Sphere is showing us that it's possible.
We've talked about a lot of good things about Organic Sphere, but
Right.
are there any downsides or trade-offs? Like we mentioned the shorter shelf life of fresh milled flour. Is there anything else that might make someone hesitant?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's always good to look at both sides. So one thing to keep in mind is that Organic Sphere flour isn't fortified with extra vitamins and minerals like some conventional flours are.
Oh, really? I thought fortification was a good thing.
Well, it can be. Fortification was introduced to combat nutrient deficiencies, but some people prefer to get those nutrients from whole foods instead of added vitamins.
That makes sense. So it really depends on individual preferences and dietary needs.
Exactly.
Mm.
And it's always smart to talk to a doctor or a nutritionist if you have specific questions.
Good point. Okay, so we've covered the history, the philosophy, the process, the products, the people, even the potential downsides. What else is there to discover about Organic Sphere? What's next in our deep dive?
As we've been talking about Organic Sphere, I keep thinking they're more than just a flour company.
Yeah.
It's almost like they've created a community.
Hmm.
People coming together over their shared love of good food.
I think that's a great way to put it.
And they're really encouraging that connection, too, with the mill visits and the resources they offer, and even that idea of letting people mill their own grain someday.
Yeah, it's all about breaking down those walls between the people making the food and the people eating it. Hmm. Exactly. And it's really refreshing to see, especially these days when we're so disconnected from where our food comes from.
Absolutely.
I've been thinking about something you said earlier about Organic Sphere being part of this bigger movement,
Yeah.
this pushback against the way our food system works now. It's like going back to a more traditional way of doing things.
I think you're right on there. I mean, more and more people are realizing the downsides of mass production,
Yeah,
and they want to reconnect with their food on a deeper level.
that makes sense. And it's not just about romanticizing the past. It's about valuing quality and craftsmanship and having respect for the ingredients.
Absolutely. It's about rediscovering the joy of food that's made with care. Using methods that have been passed down for generations.
So true. Okay, so let's get practical for a minute.
Okay.
We talked about some of the ways to use these different flours, but for someone who's used to using regular flour, are there any things they should keep in mind when working with Organic Sphere flour?
That's a great question. It really depends on the type of flour.
Yeah.
Some of their flours, like the all-purpose wheat flour, you can basically use it just like regular flour.
Okay.
But others, like the ancient grain flours, might need some tweaking to your recipes.
So you might have to experiment a little.
Exactly. And that's part of the fun, right? Trying new things. And Organic Sphere, they have a ton of resources on their website. Recipes, tips, even videos.
Oh, wow.
So you can get all the guidance you need.
That's fantastic. I love that they're not just selling you something, they're actually helping you use it and be successful.
Exactly. It's all about empowering people in the kitchen.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, the products, the process, the values. As we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one big thing you want listeners to take away from this? What's the essence of the Organic Sphere story?
I think it comes down to their dedication to quality, transparency, and community. They're showing that a business can be successful while staying true to those values
Yeah.
and hopefully inspiring others to do the same.
It's a powerful message, especially in a world that's all about convenience and efficiency. Organic sphere is reminding us that there's another way, a way that honors tradition, nourishes our bodies, and connects us to our food.
Beautifully said. It's a reminder that food is about so much more than just filling our stomachs.
Right.
It's about connection and community and celebrating those simple joys in life.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought to ponder. Imagine a world where everything organic sphere stands for was the norm, not the exception. Quality, transparency, community at the heart of our entire food system. What would that world look like? And what could each of us do to make that happen?
That's a really thought-provoking question. It makes you think about what's possible,
Hmm.
A future where our food choices reflect our values, where we choose nourishment over convenience, where we appreciate the connection between everything.
And maybe just by asking these questions, we're already taking a step in the right direction.
I think so.
Yeah.
So let's keep talking about these things. Let's keep exploring, and let's never give up on the idea that good food can change the world.
Beautifully said. And on that inspiring note, we'll say goodbye for now. Until next time, fellow food lovers, keep those taste buds adventurous and stay open to the possibilities of a better food future.